Imagine a battlefield where artillery positions, armored convoys, and fortified points that once seemed secure are suddenly targeted with deadly accuracy, forcing commanders to rethink strategy on the fly. Reports indicate that the psychological impact is as significant as the physical, the introduction of the Czech Narwhal missile onto the Russian front lines represents a significant and unprecedented development in modern warfare, one that has already begun to alter the dynamics of combat and force military strategists to rethink conventional approaches. Designed with cutting-edge technology, the Narwhal missile combines exceptional precision, speed, and maneuverability, allowing it to strike targets with a level of accuracy that was previously difficult to achieve in contested environments. Unlike traditional artillery or unguided rocket systems, which rely on area targeting and often result in collateral damage or limited effectiveness, the Narwhal is engineered to home in on specific military assets, from armored vehicles and artillery positions to command centers and logistical hubs. This precision capability means that previously secure positions along the front lines, once thought to be shielded by natural terrain, fortifications, or conventional countermeasures, are now exposed to highly effective strikes, fundamentally changing how both sides must approach positioning and defense. The presence of such a weapon alters the psychological and strategic calculus for commanders and soldiers alike, as the certainty of safety in supposedly protected zones is dramatically reduced. Russian forces, facing a weapon capable of striking with near unerring accuracy, must now contend with heightened vulnerability, constantly reassessing the locations of troops, equipment, and supply lines to minimize exposure to this new threat. The deployment of the Narwhal also represents a broader shift in the technological landscape of the conflict, highlighting how smaller nations with advanced defense capabilities can introduce weapons systems that punch far above their weight, exerting strategic influence disproportionate to their size. Analysts have noted that the missile's effectiveness is amplified not only by its engineering, but also by the element of surprise and the adaptability of its operators, who are able to deploy it in ways that maximize disruption and psychological pressure on Russian units. Soldiers on the receiving end of these attacks are reporting increased anxiety and caution, as positions once considered secure are suddenly susceptible to high-precision strikes, forcing adjustments in movement, engagement tactics, and coordination. The ripple effects extend beyond immediate battlefield losses, as the presence of the Narwhal challenges long-standing assumptions about frontline security and exposes vulnerabilities in previously reliable operational practices. Military experts suggest that the introduction of such precision-guided systems can serve as a force multiplier, allowing smaller units to achieve outsized impact by targeting critical nodes within larger formations, thereby shaping the tempo and flow of engagements in ways that were not possible with older, less accurate weaponry. This capability underscores a new reality in which the ability to strike accurately from a distance becomes a decisive factor in operational planning, compelling armies to invest in countermeasures, enhanced surveillance, and adaptive strategies to mitigate the missile's impact. In essence, the Narwhal missile does more than deliver physical destruction. It fundamentally shifts the perception of safety, disrupts established tactics, and forces a reevaluation of what it means to hold, defend, or advance along contested front lines, marking a pivotal moment in the evolution of modern combat dynamics. The exposure and vulnerability of Russian forces as a result of the deployment of the Czech Narwhal missile has introduced a new and alarming dimension to the conflict, transforming the front lines into areas of extreme risk and uncertainty. Previously, Russian troops had relied on traditional defensive measures, fortifications, and tactical positioning to maintain a sense of security in contested regions, but the Narwhal missile has undermined these assumptions by combining mobility, precision targeting, and rapid deployment, making even well-protected positions susceptible to sudden, devastating strikes. The impact of this weapon is felt not only in the physical damage inflicted on personnel, vehicles, and artillery, but also in the psychological toll it imposes on soldiers who must now operate under constant threat of high-accuracy attacks. Russian units find themselves rethinking movement patterns, supply routes, and defensive configurations, often dispersing forces or abandoning advantageous positions to avoid becoming predictable targets. This shift in operational behavior reflects a broader vulnerability. A military accustomed to controlling territory and relying on numerical superiority or established defensive strategies now faces a weapon system that prioritizes precision over brute force, rendering traditional doctrines less effective and increasing the operational risk for even seasoned commanders. The presence of the Narwhal missile forces Russian leadership to contend with uncertainty at multiple levels, from tactical skirmishes to broader strategic planning. Frontline commanders must balance the immediate need to protect troops with longer-term objectives, often having to make difficult decisions about where to allocate resources, when to reposition units, and how to mitigate exposure to a weapon capable of striking with near-perfect accuracy. This operational stress is magnified by the awareness that each missile strike can inflict disproportionate damage relative to the size of the attacking force, creating a scenario in which the loss of a single well-defended position can trigger cascading effects across an entire sector of front. The vulnerability introduced by the Narwhal is compounded by the nature of modern communication and reconnaissance. Russian troops are now operating under the knowledge that surveillance systems, drones, and forward observers can coordinate with precision guided missile strikes to locate and eliminate targets in real time. This connectivity increases the speed and lethality of attacks, leaving units with minimal time to react and creating a persistent sense of exposure. Soldiers report heightened stress levels and a constant state of alert, which not only affects their immediate decision-making, but also has longer-term implications for morale, unit cohesion, and operational effectiveness. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. The perception that no position is safe can erode confidence in leadership, weaken trust among units, and amplify the fear of engagement, all of which undermine the overall fighting capability of a force. Strategically, the vulnerability caused by the Narwhal missile has ripple effects beyond individual engagements. Russian planners must now allocate additional resources to reconnaissance, countermeasures, and defensive technologies to mitigate the missile's effectiveness, diverting attention and supplies from offensive operations. The introduction of such a weapon also has implications for territorial control, as areas once considered defensible may now be deemed untenable, leading to potential withdrawals or shifts in deployment patterns that can influence the broader operational landscape. Additionally, the effectiveness of the Narwhal missile highlights the growing influence of smaller nations capable of producing advanced precision, guided systems that challenge larger militaries, altering the balance of power and introducing asymmetric threats that traditional strategies are ill-prepared to address. Russian forces, facing a combination of technological sophistication, rapid deployment, and unexpected targeting capabilities, must contend with a new form of battlefield calculus, where risk assessment, movement, and engagement decisions are continually influenced by the threat of high-precision strikes. The vulnerability extends to logistical operations as well, as supply lines, communication hubs, and command centers are now targets for Narwhal attacks. Protecting these nodes requires constant adaptation, dispersion of assets, and implementation of countermeasures, all of which strain operational capacity and complicate coordination across multiple units. The psychological pressure, combined with the tangible risk to personnel and equipment, can lead to hesitation, delayed actions, and reduced initiative on the part of Russian commanders and soldiers alike, further amplifying the strategic advantage of the weapon's operators. In essence, the Narwhal missile transforms the battlefield from a controlled environment where force and positioning dictated outcomes into a zone of uncertainty and lethal precision, where every decision carries heightened risk. The exposure of Russian forces and the subsequent adjustments they must make illustrate a fundamental shift in modern warfare, demonstrating how a single technological advancement can redefine vulnerability, disrupt established tactics, and compel militaries to rethink both operational and strategic paradigms. This new reality emphasizes the interplay between technology, psychology, and strategy, revealing that vulnerability is not merely about physical exposure, but also about the erosion of confidence, predictability, and the ability to maintain effective command and control in a rapidly changing and highly dangerous environment. As the conflict evolves, the lessons learned from the introduction of the Narwhal missile will likely shape military thinking, force structural adaptations, and influence the conduct of engagements on both sides, highlighting the profound consequences of exposing forces to high precision. Rapid deployment weapon systems in contemporary combat scenarios. The Russian military's experience underscores the fact that modern vulnerability is multidimensional, encompassing physical, tactical, psychological, and strategic factors, and that addressing such threats requires a comprehensive reevaluation of doctrine, deployment, and risk management in an era where technological precision can turn entire front lines into kill zones. The deployment of the Czech Narwhal missile has fundamentally reshaped tactical engagements and battlefield strategies, creating a reality in which Russian forces must operate under constant threat and adapt to a level of precision firepower that challenges conventional military thinking. Previously, Russian commanders relied on traditional principles of combined arms warfare, fortification, and numerical superiority to dictate the pace and outcome of engagements, often assuming that certain positions, armored formations, and supply lines could be secured against typical artillery and missile attacks. The introduction of the Narwhal missile, with its advanced targeting systems, mobility, and rapid deployment capability, has disrupted these assumptions, forcing commanders to reconsider where and how to position troops and equipment. This shift in tactical calculus is not limited to reactive measures, but extends to the fundamental planning of operations, where every decision must now account for the potential of high-precision strikes that can neutralize critical assets in seconds. Russian units are increasingly dispersing formations, implementing more frequent relocations, and investing in camouflage and electronic countermeasures in an attempt to reduce predictability and exposure. Such measures, while necessary, come at the cost of operational cohesion, communication efficiency, and rapid response capability, demonstrating the trade-offs inherent in adapting to a threat that emphasizes precision over brute force. Analysts note that the missile's effectiveness forces commanders to prioritize survivability over offensive momentum, creating a defensive mindset that can slow advances, limit initiative, and constrain the flexibility of battlefield maneuvers. The tactical implications extend to the planning and execution of combined arms operations, where coordination between infantry, armored units, artillery, and air support must now integrate countermeasures against a threat capable of striking with near-perfect accuracy. This requires a higher level of intelligence, reconnaissance, and real-time decision-making, as traditional assumptions about terrain, cover, and fortification are rendered less reliable. In addition, the psychological dimension of facing an unpredictable and highly lethal weapon amplifies the operational impact, as soldiers experience heightened stress, uncertainty, and anxiety that can influence judgment, timing, and overall effectiveness. The missile's precision allows for selective targeting of command nodes, logistical hubs, and high-value assets, meaning that even well-coordinated attacks can be disrupted if key points are neutralized, forcing Russian forces to adapt dynamically and often reactively. Strategically, this introduces a form of asymmetric pressure, where a single advanced system can impose outsized effects on the planning, tempo, and outcome of engagements, compelling a reassessment of how force multipliers, mobility, and resource allocation are prioritized. Commanders must now weigh the risk of concentrating forces for offensive purposes against the increased likelihood of suffering catastrophic losses from precise missile strikes, fundamentally altering operational doctrines and shaping the tempo of campaigns. The presence of the Narwhal also affects how Russian forces approach defensive positioning, as traditional linear defenses, entrenched positions, and fortified installations can no longer be assumed to provide security. The missile's mobility and targeting flexibility require continuous movement, dispersion of assets, and redundancy in supply and communication lines, increasing the complexity of coordination and introducing opportunities for errors that can have significant tactical consequences. Training and preparation must now focus on rapid adaptation, threat anticipation, and the integration of countermeasures to minimize vulnerability, creating an environment in which battlefield decisions are made under unprecedented pressure and uncertainty. Furthermore, the missile's introduction forces Russian forces to reconsider the allocation of resources, both material and human, as assets must be diverted to protection, concealment, and counteraction, reducing the resources available for offensive operations and potentially slowing the overall campaign. The tactical impact extends to both large-scale engagements and localized skirmishes, as the knowledge that any position can be struck with high precision shapes the movement of troops, the timing of attacks, and the prioritization of objectives. The operational unpredictability introduced by the Narwhal complicates supply and reinforcement efforts, as convoys and rear area operations are no longer safe from rapid, targeted attacks, requiring alternative routes, enhanced protection, and constant vigilance. Analysts have also highlighted the cascading effect on morale, command confidence, and the broader strategic posture of Russian forces, as the missile's presence forces a defensive mindset that can reduce initiative, delay decision-making, and increase risk aversion, all of which influence the broader course of engagements. The technological sophistication of the Narwhal missile demonstrates how precision-guided systems are increasingly capable of redefining the rules of engagement, forcing adaptation at every level of military planning and execution. Russian forces are compelled to integrate intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and electronic countermeasures into every aspect of battlefield strategy to mitigate the missile's effects, creating an operational environment in which flexibility, adaptability, and situational awareness are critical to survival. This evolution reflects a broader trend in modern warfare, where technological innovation and precision capabilities can shape tactics, disrupt established doctrines, and compel even large and experienced militaries to reassess fundamental assumptions about battlefield control, survivability, and the conduct of operations. The Narwhal missile's influence extends beyond immediate tactical effects, impacting the psychological, operational, and strategic dimensions of military engagement, illustrating that modern warfare increasingly favors precision, adaptability, and rapid response over traditional measures of strength and numerical superiority. By forcing Russian forces to adapt to a new threat paradigm, the missile reshapes the battlefield in ways that are immediate, visible, and consequential, demonstrating that the introduction of advanced weaponry can have transformative effects on tactics, strategy, and the broader conduct of war. The cumulative effect is a comprehensive shift in operational behavior, tactical doctrine, and strategic planning, where survivability, dispersion, and rapid adaptation take precedence, fundamentally redefining how Russian forces engage, maneuver, and operate under the persistent threat of high-precision strikes that can neutralize critical assets in moments, emphasizing the enduring impact of technology on the evolution of modern military engagements.